Hey, what's up? It's Kit time for another video. Today, we're going to talk about something or three things you need to work on to upgrade your ultralight fishing. Now, in front of us here are two ultralight reels, spinning and bait casting. So in this system, we call BFS, but all it is really is just ultralight bait casting. That's it. And we call it BFS. Obviously, when you're ultralight fishing, most of the time you'll be using a spinning reel, but we'll cover those in a bit. But the three things that you need to work on when you want to upgrade your ultralight fishing is accuracy, okay, distance, and depth. So these three things are very important. Now, these two are about 80% skill, whereas this would be 80% equipment and then 20% skill. Okay, so this is 20% equipment. So we'll break these down and we'll discuss further. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, by the way, this channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing. We cover everything from big game, ultralight, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. And today we're going to talk about three things you need to improve on to upgrade your ultralight fishing. This is not specific to ultralight, but this is more apparent in ultralight because this is something that you really need to work on if you actually want to improve. And especially with ultralight, you're dealing with lighter lures, lighter line. It kind of becomes a bit more difficult. So everything gets a bit more challenging as soon as you scale things down. And this is exactly what we're talking about here. Okay, so accuracy has a lot of factors that you need to actually tune to be able to be accurate. Now, 80% of it is skill, as I said, okay, because there's no way around it. At the end of the day, if you want to be accurate, you have to be fishing or practicing. And the way to practice this is to actually go out and then hit targets, whether you're in a park, you're at home, short distance accuracy. You could practice in your yard, in your backyard. If you're near water, it's even easier. Now, I used to do this outside of fishing and actually just go to a yard or vacant lot or whatever, and then practice casting, trying to hit the targets. Now, very, very important is that one aspect of casting that a lot of people don't know is how to feather, okay? And this is how you get accurate. Okay, first, when you're casting, you don't just cast and hope that it actually falls on the right spot. What you need to learn is how to feather. Okay, feathering is just basically adjusting the friction with your pointer finger and then feather it, give it more resistance to slow the lure down. And then when you're stopping it, you just put your finger there. Quite straightforward. Now for bait casters, you do it with your thumb. Okay, so when you're casting, you can feather with your thumb and you can stop it entirely when you press down. Of the two, the bait caster gives you the most accuracy. Now, I know a lot of people would probably say like, hey, that's impossible and all this, but you could actually see this in the Bass Pro fishing circuit where people are very, very accurate and they use bait casters majority of the time. It is because of the accuracy that the bait caster gives you. All right. But doesn't mean to say that you can't be accurate with a spinning reel. Of course you can, but it takes a lot more practice. By default, the bait caster is just accurate. All right. When we talk about accuracy, and I'm saying 20% of this is tackle, it may be true because a lot of people don't really look at the balance of their rod and reel. And that's quite important. A lot of people tend to kind of just put things together without even a good thought on what their line should be, what their lure should be, what their rod should be, and all that. But when you're looking at accuracy and you're looking at something that, when you're looking at putting together gear, it is very important that everything is balanced, because if it's not balanced, you'll have a hard time actually getting accurate. Okay. Now, a very good rod and reel would help you, but it still needs skill to be able to be accurate. So practicing may be it for accuracy. However, gear plays a good part of that as well. Lighter gear would be easier to handle, and lighter gear becomes a bit, well, it kind of goes towards the more expensive side of things. All right, or at least light, durable gear. But generally, if you want to be accurate, you want your rod and reel to be as light as possible and practice. Okay, so there's no way around this. The hardest thing is when you want to cast accurately at the distance. Okay, so the closer it is, it's easier to be very accurate. But when it comes to distance, accuracy and distance, it's hard to achieve. All right, so this is obviously very important. Accuracy, the whole reason why I put accuracy in front of distance and depth control is because in order for you to be able to catch a fish, you'd have to actually aim and put your lure to where you want it. Now, here's a very good example. Now, when you're fishing, let's say this is the bank, this is you, and you're casting. If you can't cast straight, that's a very big problem. Not only would it be dangerous for you to be fishing around electrical wires or around trees, God forbid, around people. If you can't cast accurately, you're not going to be able to put your lure to where you're supposed to be. Now, sometimes when there's people around fishing with you, okay, and you're casting, you want to cast straight, but it tends to go here, and this guy's casting this way, that's it. You know, you're gonna have a lot of enemies. Plus, now, if this is, let's say, a post and then you're here, okay, casting here and accurately landing it there is very different from landing it here. You'll get more strikes if you're able to actually hit that spot right there. And that's very, very important. And I think, or I believe, accuracy actually is very, very important to be able to get your lure to where you need it to be. Need, not want. After a while, becomes second nature if you just practice and you're able to cast accurately where you want things to go. Very, very important. Second is distance. And distance, again, is 80% skill and 20% gear. There are adjustments on the newer reels, the spool lip, the design, the length of the spool. Actually, before, reels like these would actually have very shallow, very short spools. And what happens there is that you won't be able to cast distance because the line had to go up and over the lip. So casting distances were actually kind of short. Now, with equal skill, and let's say you have the same skill level as the guy that's using old school spools, with these new reels, when you cast out, by default, it just goes far. All right. Now, again, if you look at all the distance casting records, you'll find that overheads actually cast farther than spinning reels. Just a fact. Okay. So when you're talking about distance casting, you'll find a small number of people casting spinning reels, but majority of the people that are casting for distance use overheads. The reason why a lot of people are using spinning reels for casting is because it's easier to cast with it, and that's fine. Now, distance is very important because let's say if you're fishing, okay, here, and you have friends fishing with you right there, and then let's say this is their distance, okay, and you're able to cast farther. It means that you're covering water that they can't reach. And this is why distance is very important. Now, when you're fishing ultralight, especially, this distance is very much related to the next topic, which is depth. Because when you're casting far out, you could actually work different depths or get your lure deeper. Okay, so distance is a very, very important component. A lot of people neglect this because they think that it's not really accurate and that the fish is just in front. And rightfully so, sometimes it happens like that. But when you're faced with uh, places that are new to you, it's easier to actually cast far and cover more ground than, say, someone who just casts like that. Okay, so when you're fan casting, distance matters so much because you're covering so much ground compared to this guy that just covers that distance. So distance is very, very important. Now, casting accurately at distance is a skill that not a lot of people have. So when you combine those two, it becomes a bit more difficult. Again, there's no way around it. It is practice. Distance is also ruled by your hardware. Now, a lot of this has to do with your line. Now, take for example, I have on this reel, I have 0.6 or 0.4, sorry. So my diameter is PE 0.4 and it is thinner than, say, PE 0.8. Okay, so when I'm casting with the same weight lure, let's say I'm casting this guy right here. Okay, so if I'm casting this, which is, I think this is about 5 grams. So if I'm casting a 5-gram lure on a 0.4 line, this will actually go farther than 0.8 or 0.6 because this is thinner. Okay. Now, when I'm casting out, this spool actually diminishes. With a 0.8, this spool diminishes faster. And when your line diminishes faster, what happens is that it has to fight the spool going up and over. Whereas with the 0.4, it doesn't diminish much because it has thinner diameter. So it has an easier time actually going out of the lip. That's one of the things that's a really big factor. Also, the diameter has less drag on the guides, on the lip, and it just goes farther because it has less friction. Now, thinner diameter line also does not have a lot of drag when you're casting out. So when you're casting out, air actually affects the line and it creates drag. Just like that. Okay, so the thinner that line is, the less the drag from the air as it's going through, going forward. That's why thinner line actually goes farther. So when you are considering spooling your reel, now this is a very good example right here. This is 0.4. I'm going to be changing it to the same line as this, which is actually quite thin. This is 0.25 actually from Momoy, which is the Oshikage. Okay, so this is the line I'm using. Oshikage from Momoy. Okay, so the poundage of this is actually about 3 pounds. And then the poundage of this is supposed to be 4, but it's way thicker than this. So I'm going to be changing this to thinner line because I want it to go farther. And it's just as simple as that. So when you go farther, it also follows that you'd be able to cast smaller heads. Okay, so I have heads of up to down to about 0.5 grams, and very, very important because I'm able to cast that. Whereas with thicker line, of course, I'm not really able to cast that far. And especially when you're fishing shallower water, guess what? The smaller, lighter jig heads work more than the bigger ones, and you'd be able to detect more strikes. So that's it. So there's a again, take skill to be able to cast farther, because there are certain techniques. So when you're casting, you're just not swinging it. You have to load your rod effectively to be able to cast farther. But again, you won't be able to cast farther if you don't balance your rod and reel. So accuracy and distance, skill based. All right. 20% from the gear, but caveat is that 20% is also because your gear is already very balanced. Now, depth control is very, very important, and it has a lot to do with the lures that you use. Now, for my ultralight, I'm going to show you guys these. These are some lures that I use. Okay, so you'll see that I have a vibrating blade, which is something that I use to cast out far. And this obviously works on the very bottom. These ones are actually, if I remember correctly, these are suspending lures, and they help me fish the middle column. And this is a crankbait that goes down to the bottom. So again, if I'm casting this, I need the distance to be able to cast it out, and then depth, it goes down. Because the reel I'm also using is low gear. So part of depth control has to do with your gear, not by much, but it's basically staying where you should be staying. Now, if you're using a reel that's too fast, what happens is that it just goes down, goes fast, and you're not even able to cover the depth that you want. So it's very, very important to actually also have a slower reel. This is a PG. Okay. I think you could see it there barely, but it should say 1000 PG. So you need to have lures that target different areas of the water column. There are lures that are strictly working on top, such as these poppers. And then those that you can count down. Okay, so this is a countdown minnow. You cast it out, and then it sinks very slowly, and you're able to actually work different depths. Now, depth control, of course, is very important because you have to fish your lure in the area where the fish are in. And that's a no-brainer when it comes to that. Now, there are lures like crankbaits that go shallow, and then the same version that go deep. So you vary your retrieve, you vary your depth, the distance that you cast, and then you'd be able to cover water where the fish are swimming in, and more than likely you get a strike. There are lures that are able to, even heavy lures such as these, that you could cast really far, and then you're able to present it at different depths by adjusting your rod tip. You point it up, it goes shallower. Point it down towards the water, it goes deeper. Okay, so this is a very simplified and very oversimplified, actually, rundown of the 3 things that you need to work on if you want to improve your fishing, especially in ultralight. So that's it. If you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to comment below. Questions, reactions, and violent reactions, very much welcome. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope this video helps. This video is kind of late. I was supposed to actually kind of do it right after I arrived, but I've just recovered my voice. But anyway, that's it, guys. Again, if you have questions, please drop it down in the comments. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share if you want, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed.